Amazing twist revealed. Expelled Black Farm Kids' unexpected journey transforms school in a day. Jamal stared out of the small window in the principal's office, his heart racing. This wasn't just a suspension. It was an expulsion. His gaze drifted to the fields of golden corn, swaying with the gentle breeze, a stark contrast to the chaos swirling in his mind. He felt like an outsider in the very world he loved. The laughter of his classmates echoed in the hallways, a tune he could never quite join, now painfully muffled behind the walls of administrative judgment. He wanted to scream. How could they do this to him? He had always tried to fit in, but subtle jabs lingered like rain clouds over a clear sky. They called him names and whispered when he passed. He wanted to brush it off, to suppress the sting with bravado. But today was different. After yet another confrontation with Rick, who sneered as he shoved past Jamal, slipping into their history class, Jamal snapped. Words turned into a flurry of emotions, his fists clenched tight and breaths shallow. One misplaced shove, one misunderstood reaction, and there he stood, kicked out for defending his dignity. As the door closed behind him, a weight settled onto Jamal's shoulders. Could he bear the shame? The feeling of black clouds settling over his mind was unbearable. His chest tightened, each thought spiraling deeper into despair. Would he be known only as the expelled kid, the angry black boy? Following the guidance of his grandmother, he had always believed in hard work. Is this how it ends? Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. In the safety of his room later that day, Jamal felt a rising determination. He thought of his grandmother, her calming presence a lighthouse in a stormy sea. Instead of wallowing in rejection, she would say he should turn pain into purpose. Unsure yet motivated, Jamal opened his laptop and began to write. His fingers flew over the keys. He documented his family's farming practices, weaving stories of resilience and innovation. The land nurtured him, just as it had his ancestors, and he would share it with the world. Yet as he poured his soul into words, the nagging doubts crept in like unwelcome guests. Would anyone care? Would they hear him? Positioned even deeper in isolation, he wrestled with fear and hope intertwined. The faces of his classmates flashed before him. Would they ever look beyond their biases? Would his blog make a difference, or was it merely another path to heartbreak? An avalanche of emotion crashed over him, leaving him gasping. He finished his post just as the sky turned dark outside, pulse racing with uncertainty. Life would change somehow, he thought. But would it strengthen him or drown him further into despair? The gravity of his endeavor loomed like an unseen weight, pressing down. How would they react to the boy who had been pushed aside? In that moment of intense inner conflict, the question echoed louder than anything else in his mind. Was he strong enough to confront what lay ahead? Jamal awoke the next morning with a renewed sense of purpose thrumming through him like the heartbeat of a restless animal. The flickering light of his laptop screen cast long shadows across the room, reminding him of the words he had unleashed the night before. They were just words, yes, but to him they felt like seeds ready to sprout. Today would be the day he turned despair into action. He glanced at his phone and reluctantly opened social media. With a single deep breath, he posted a snippet from his blog, an excerpt about the connection between his heritage and the land he cherished. Ignoring the rising tide of insecurity, he pressed post. His heart pounded as he watched the screen refresh, and for a moment the world stood still. Would his peers respond with laughter or indifference? Hesitance washed over him, but there was no turning back now. A ping, a notification. His fingers danced across the screen, revealing a comment from an unexpected source, a classmate from chemistry, Lily. She expressed admiration for his bravery to speak about his roots. Hope flickered. Maybe, just maybe, a softening had begun, starting from the most unexpected corners. Conscious of his racing heart, Jamal decided to confront their shared history rather than dwell in fears. He uncovered an opportunity. The school had a student-led conference on agriculture and sustainability scheduled in a few weeks. The moment he read about it, a surge of determination propelled him. What if he shared his family's farming practices there, integrated with the stories he had begun to write? Perhaps speaking about shared values could bridge gaps he never thought possible. Jamal grabbed a notepad and began jotting down ideas for his presentation, alongside anecdotes from his childhood. He envisioned himself standing in front of an audience, connecting the community back to the land. His mind raced with possibilities. The hands that had planted seeds and nurtured crops deserved a voice. But there was doubt lurking in the corners of this sudden clarity. What if the conference turned into another battleground for ridicule? The harsh laughter of Rick echoed in the back of his mind at the thought. Later, as he walked through the quiet fields, he mulled over his fears, wrestling with an internal dialogue that swung between inspiration and trepidation. Would he be well received? Each step on the soil his ancestors tilled filled him with a semblance of grounding. The weight of expectation waged war against his burgeoning ambition. He could feel it, the strands of self-doubt beginning to unwind with each footfall. His mind shifted to how people often perceived him, an angry black boy, an outsider. It fueled a new resolve. He could transform that narrative step by step. He wouldn't allow those identities to encapsulate his story. If he could project authenticity through his words and actions, maybe he could redefine the lens through which others viewed him. The sun began to set, casting long shadows across the field, and Jamal knew the moment of choice had arrived. Would he risk embarrassment at the conference to reclaim his narrative? He inhaled deeply, contemplating not just what was at stake, but also what he stood to gain. That night he stayed up late, crafting his presentation. Each word flowed through him, filling the void left by the expulsion, a raw and beautiful testament to who he was. When he finally pressed save, he felt the weight shift. Maybe strength resided not just in defiance, but in vulnerability. With this realization, a flicker of confidence ignited within him. The upcoming conference could become a powerful platform, if only he dared to face it. But as he lay in bed, his heart racing at the thought of the stage ahead, another uncertainty gripped him. How would Rick respond upon witnessing Jamal take his stand? The time had come to confront not only his fears, but also the very shadows that had shaped his existence. Jamal woke up the next morning, the weight of anticipation mingling with the remnants of self-doubt. Sunlight filtered through his window, igniting the dusty particles suspended in the air. But rather than providing warmth, it felt like a spotlight, casting his insecurities into sharp relief. Today was not just another day, it was the key day. He approached his desk nervously, eyes landing on the notepad filled with hastily scrawled ideas for his presentation. Each line represented a chance, not just for him to speak, but for him to be heard. Guided by an inner compass of hope, he reviewed his notes, reshaping sentences and ensuring the flow resonated with a personal connection to his roots. He had no intention of simply stating facts. Every story he wove was a brushstroke on the canvas of his identity. But as he wrote, he found himself stalling. Was he steady enough to face an audience? What if his voice trembled or, worse, faltered altogether? Gritting his teeth, Jamal pushed those thoughts aside. He recalled Lily's comment from yesterday, how it had ignited a flicker of self-belief. If she could recognize his bravery, could others too? At school, the buzz of students filled the hallways like an electric pulse, palpable yet unnerving. Jamal's heart raced as he navigated through the throngs, mental rehearsals momentarily drowned out by apprehension. His eyes flickered toward faces that had formed the backdrop of his life, some friendly, others indifferent, and a few harboring hostility, like Rick. The laughter of the past echoed uncomfortably in his mind. When he arrived at the auditorium, the stage loomed ahead, a daunting expanse waiting to be filled. His heart thudded in time with his racing thoughts. Jamal could already envision Rick leaning against the back wall, a smirk plastered on his face. The notion tightened a knot of anxiety in his stomach. Suddenly, a rush of clarity surged through him. He wasn't merely confronting Rick today, he was challenging the narrative that followed him like a shadow. Shifting his focus, he drank in the diverse audience, students and teachers with varying levels of interest etched on their faces. This was an opportunity to transcend labels. An angry black boy could become a passionate advocate, if only he dared to step into the light. As the first speaker's voice echoed in the auditorium, Jamal pulled out his notes, running a finger along the words that both excited and terrified him. He wondered if his voice would crack, or if the stories of his ancestors would emerge fluidly, crafting a tapestry of resilience and hope. Then came the moment. The program facilitator called his name, eyes sweeping across the room like a spotlight, casting all others into shadow. With each step toward the stage, he felt parts of himself shedding. The scared boy who had been ridiculed, the labeled outsider. He ascended the stairs, the familiar aversion mixing with a surge of empowerment. As he stood before the crowd, vulnerability tinged with strength, the tension was palpable. Bathed in a sea of expectant faces, Jamal felt the breath catch in his throat, but in the crowd's silence, he heard something unexpected, a whisper of encouragement blooming from within. He opened his mouth to speak, and just like that, he reclaimed his narrative. But then, from the far back of the room, a familiar voice sliced through the air, laced with disbelief. "You think we care?" Rick's taunt reverberated, a jarring reminder of the very doubts he was striving to dismiss. In that singular moment, Jamal felt his heart race anew, not from fear, but from something far more potent. The confrontation wasn't just external. It had become visceral, pulling him into an unexpected confrontation that demanded an answer. Would he allow Rick's words to define him, or would he turn that energy into conviction? The weight of the room settled around him, and it was now or never. The direction of his journey was poised to shift dramatically, capturing not just his story, but the narratives of others who felt tethered. Suddenly his resolve solidified. The opportunity to connect, to enlighten, to stand strong in his truth, screamed louder than the echoes of ridicule. As he exhaled, the moment of truth awaited him, bursting with potential, yet teetering on the brink of chaos. What he didn't know was how profoundly this confrontation would alter the course of his existence, and that of the very people who had once cast him aside. Jamal drew a deep breath, allowing the air to fill his lungs, clearing the fog of doubt clouding his mind. Rick's derision, while sharp and cutting, ignited a fire within him that yearned for expression. "You think we care?" echoed in the corners of his consciousness, yet he pivoted. This moment held the potential for transformation, not merely for himself, but for anyone who had ever felt intimidated into silence. "Yeah, I think you do care," he began, his voice trembling but gaining strength as he continued. "You care because you're part of this community, with me and every other person standing here today." The audience shifted, a breath of intrigue circulating through the seated rows. Even Rick's sneer faltered, if only for a fleeting second. Jamal saw faces light up, curiosity dancing in their eyes. Perhaps it wasn't just about him, it was also about showing them a dimension of truth they hadn't yet seen. With each word, he spoke not only of his own journey filled with struggle and resilience, but wove inclusivity into the fabric of his story. He recounted the history of his family, of generations that fought against the tide, giving context to his identity, not as a label, but as a part of a larger narrative. The pulsating energy around him transformed. Students leaned forward, some nodding in agreement. Jamal caught sight of Lily in the front row, her face beaming encouragement. It grounded him, turning his attention away from Rick's taunts and deepening his focus on the real impact he could create. He recounted pivotal moments that had shaped him, the stares when he walked into class, the remarks his peers threw like daggers. But he balanced every instance of pain with a story of triumph, each one a testament to endurance. By sharing both the struggles and victories, he painted an evolving portrait of not just survival, but hope and aspiration. The rising momentum in the auditorium became palpable. He saw more than just rapt listeners. He glimpsed a community coming to life, beginning to realize their shared experiences. Jamal wasn't just speaking, he was facilitating a reckoning, a collective awakening that the narratives they all carried, fraught with complexities, were not isolated but interconnected. Then it came, a moment of clarity that illuminated Jamal's purpose in all this. "You might not think you care," he said, and this time he directed his gaze toward Rick, his steady voice echoing across the auditorium. "But every time you laugh, every time you make someone feel small, you diminish all of us, and that's not okay." Rick's expression hardened, an unwilling participant in the dialogue of revelation. In that moment, Jamal's challenge hung in the air, demanding empathy, accountability, and unity. As his final words resonated throughout the space, he felt a catharsis wash over him. We can choose to uplift instead of tear down. We can build a legacy together that reflects understanding and respect. So, who will join me in rewriting the narrative? The auditorium erupted, a murmur of excitement rolling through the masses. Jamal stood before them, not as a boy molded by pain, but as a catalyst of change, a voice amplified through authenticity. He felt lighter, liberated from the chains of insecurity that had shackled him for too long. But even as he basked in the glow of newfound confidence, an unsettling notion stirred within. Would this message resonate beyond the auditorium doors? Could he transcend this moment into something more profound? Would Rick and those like him remain resistant to change? The tension lingered, lingering like the pulse of an unfinished symphony, as the potential for a transformative journey began to unfurl, allowing a spark of anticipation to ignite his next steps in this uncharted territory. The excitement of the audience hung in the air like a thick fog, but as Jamal stepped back from the podium, a new reality pressed against him. The applause washed over him in waves, yet within that euphoric moment, self-doubt intruded like an uninvited guest. What would happen tomorrow? Would his words echo beyond this place, or would they sizzle out, fizzling into nothingness? He navigated through the crowd, exchanging exhilarated glances and heartfelt congratulations, but his mind slipped from the moment, seeking deeper meaning. Each pat on the back felt like a fleeting acknowledgement, but not a solution. Rick's face still lingered in his thoughts, unmoved, indifferent. The scoffs he had directed at him now served as a reminder of the work that lay ahead. "Hey, Jamal!" Lily's voice broke through his reverie, her eyes sparkling with an enthusiasm that contrasted sharply with his lingering anxiety. "You were incredible up there. You really got through to them." "Thanks, Lily," he replied, forcing a smile. "But I can't shake this feeling that it was just a show. Words are good, but actions, that's what really matters." "Right, you could start a club or something like Voices of Change," she suggested, her energy infectious. "You could organize discussions, workshops." The idea hung in the air between them, its potential palpable. A whoosh of excitement blossomed in his chest, intertwining with the weight of responsibility. Could he? "I never thought about that," Jamal mused, his brow furrowing in thought. The notion of uniting his peers around shared experiences ignited something dormant within him, a hidden competence waiting to surface. Maybe it was time he stepped fully into leadership, causing ripples beyond mere speeches. The moment flickered with possibility, but doubt clawed at the edges of his determination. Would they follow him? Would they take this journey seriously? The thought of creating a space for open dialogue was as thrilling as it was daunting. "Let's do it," he declared suddenly, emboldened by the idea. "Let's hold a meeting tomorrow. We can brainstorm what this club could look like, and not just talk. We can plan action steps." Lily beamed broadly. "Yes, you have to spread this momentum while it lasts." Feeling buoyed by her encouragement, Jamal's thoughts collided into organized chaos. Who to invite? He envisioned the faces of friends and acquaintances. Some would be eager, others withdrawn, and then there was Rick, an unfriendly shadow in the corner of his mind. That night, challenges bubbled up. How could he approach Rick again after their confrontation? What if he refused to participate, or worse, made mockery of the club? The prospect of facing him again chilled Jamal, pushing him into deeper introspection about the nature of respect and resilience. Yet within that fear, another emotion took root: determination. "I can't let fear hold me back," he whispered to himself, pacing in the dim light of his room. The commitment he felt toward fostering a culture of empathy became a reason to engage. As he lay in bed, a flicker of an idea began to form, fueled by the notion that a confrontation with Rick might be inevitable. Coming face to face with someone resistant to change could refine his message further, honing it like a blade. But the question remained: how would he confront that challenge without losing his footing? Tomorrow loomed, pregnant with expectation, a day when possibilities would collide with reality. Jamal shut his eyes, heart racing with the weight of his intentions, and allowed the uncertainty to mingle with his hope, reminding himself that this emerging path was still his to define. In the shadows lingered doubts, but a seed of leadership had been planted. Yet with so much at stake, how could he ensure this blossomed into something tangible? And when push came to shove, would he have the strength to confront Rick head-on? With questions hanging over his future, the stage was set for a decisive moment. The morning sun broke through the window, casting a warm glow that felt like both a promise and a challenge. Jamal awoke, his mind a tempest of thoughts swirling around his newfound commitment. The weight of responsibility pressed heavily on his shoulders, yet beneath it lay the thrill of possibility. Today was not just another day. Today could mark the beginning of something significant. After a quick shower and a meager breakfast, he found himself staring at his reflection in the mirror, searching for the resolve he desperately needed. The rigidity of his jaw mirrored his determination. It was time to confront his doubts head-on, much like he would soon confront the skepticism of others. He threw on a clean shirt, running his fingers through his hair in a last-minute effort to smooth things out. He needed to exude confidence, whether he believed it inside or not. As he made his way to school, he replayed the plan in his head. The meeting was set for lunchtime, an open invitation to discuss ideas for the club. But could he carry the weight of leadership? The thought of facing Rick again flared anxiety in his chest like a wildfire. What would Rick say? What if he undermined everything Jamal had worked for? It was a danger that lurked just beneath the surface of his ambition, threatening to drown him in doubt. Throughout the morning, Jamal struggled to focus in class. Each lecture seemed a dissonant hum against the onslaught of nervous energy building inside him. He felt his pulse quicken each time he glanced at his watch. The clock seemed to taunt him, ticking away the seconds until he would stand before his peers as a leader, something he had not yet proven to be. When lunchtime finally arrived, Jamal arrived early, claiming a table in the crowded cafeteria. Nervous energy buzzed in him as he laid out colorful sticky notes, pens, and scraps of paper, transforming the ordinary table into his workspace. He understood instinctively that he had to capture attention visually, a bold show of intention that mirrored the passion brimming within him. Students trickled in, eyeing him curiously, a mix of anticipation and skepticism visible on their faces. His heart pounded as if it wanted to escape. He could feel their doubt before he even said a word. Lily was the first to approach, her smile brightening the atmosphere. "You're ready for this, aren't you?" she said, her voice laced with encouragement. "Ready as I'll ever be," he replied, swallowing hard. The moment was at hand. More students gathered, whispers and sidelong glances shifting quickly as anticipation built. He could practically hear Rick's insult echoing in his mind. Would that judgment resurface today? Finally, Jamal cleared his throat, the room quieting as his eyes met those around him. "Thank you all for coming," he began, his voice steadier than he felt. "I know we all have voices, and today we're starting a space where we can share those voices and create change together." The words came from somewhere deep within him, a newfound conviction sparking with each sentence. He outlined the vision of his club, hoping to ignite the same enthusiasm in others that had awakened in him. But then, like a storm cloud looming over sunshine, Rick sauntered in, arms crossed and an expression of skepticism plastered across his face. "What's this? Another feel-good session? You think you can just rally everyone and change the world?" Rick's voice dripped with sarcasm, and Jamal felt the collective breath of the group hold, eyes darting between him and Rick. In that moment, Jamal's resolve faltered, but only briefly. The stakes were clearer now. "No," he challenged, "but I think we can try. We owe it to ourselves to at least make an effort." The tension in the room thickened, the moment pregnant with challenge. Jamal recognized that he had a choice, to rise or to fold. This was the confrontation he had been preparing for. How long could he allow fear to dictate his journey? As he stood firm, an unexpected realization struck him. It wasn't just about proving something to Rick or to anyone else. It was about proving something to himself. It was about carving out his own path, even if it meant facing down the very real obstacles looming ahead. With Rick's mocking laughter still echoing, the time had come to either step into his truth or retreat. Jamal took a deep breath, preparing for the ripple effect of leadership he had initiated. He could feel the weight of the moment stretch beyond his own fears and doubts, transforming them into something far greater. What he didn't know was that today would mark not just a chance for him to lead, but also an unforeseen challenge that would test every ounce of his strength and commitment. How far would he go to uphold what he had begun? Jamal glanced around the cafeteria, feeling the anxious hum of anticipation mixed with skepticism. The weight of Rick's scorn hovered like a storm cloud, yet Jamal felt a flicker of resilience ignite within him. He could sense the collective energy of the room, eyes yearning for something more meaningful, perhaps something radical. It was exhilarating yet terrifying. "Let's do something today that matters," he continued, meeting the eyes of every student around him. "We're not just talking about change. We have the power to create it." He could feel his voice gaining strength, fueled by the desperate hope in the eyes of his peers. For a moment, it seemed as if the weight of leadership could be shared, distributed among all who dared to dream. "And how do you propose we do that?" Rick interrupted, leaning back in his chair with an air of dominance. The nonchalance in his posture was belied by the tension in his voice. "You think your little club can take on real issues? Get back to me when you've actually done something." Jamal's heart raced at the challenge, but he refused to retreat. "As a start, we could focus on smaller projects. Even one act can ripple out, influence change, encourage others," he replied, his determination sharpening. He sensed the vast chasm separating their perspectives, Rick's cynical traits reflecting a broader societal skepticism that often crushed young ambitions. The conversation evolved from there. Students began to share ideas, awareness campaigns, community service projects, and even simple initiatives like book drives. Jamal could see their potential, their collective voice beginning to rise. Each idea bounced off the walls of the cafeteria, growing in energy and boldness. As discussions swirled around him, Jamal realized there was a hidden reservoir of creativity among his peers, waiting to be tapped. This revelation sent a current of exhilaration through him. It wasn't just about leading, it was about enabling his classmates to find their own voices and passions within the framework of what they were building. However, the moment was short-lived. The fallout from Rick's presence lingered, a mix of anxiety and fear that threatened to undermine the newfound zeal. Why was it so difficult to shake his influence? Jamal began to question his self-worth and whether he could stay true to his mission, knowing Rick's criticism might still hang over every idea they proposed. Just then, a shout cut through the chaos. "I think we should organize a fundraising event," Lily shouted, her enthusiasm infectious. "We could help those in need while also strengthening our group's bond." The idea landed like a pebble in water, sending ripples of agreement through the crowd. Jamal's heart soared. This was the moment he craved, unity igniting the kindling of their collaborative spirit. But as they sketched out plans for their first fundraising initiative, an unsettling thought pressed at the back of his mind. How would Rick respond to their momentum once he caught wind of these plans? Would he rally others to undermine their efforts? Determined not to lift his chin against that weight, Jamal planted his feet firmly on the ground. He resolved to work harder, channeling every ounce of energy into building a foundation they could all rely upon. However, despite the excitement, a nagging sense of uncertainty loomed, exacerbated by the possibility of sabotage from Rick. The meeting wound down, a sense of triumph lingering in the air, but Jamal could not shake off the dread that followed him like a shadow. What if Rick wasn't just vocal, but actively sought to derail their progress? How would Jamal stand against real opposition, the kind that attacked not just ideas, but the very spirit of possibility? As he stepped away from the table, Lily's voice calling out to him brought him back to the present. "Hey, we'll make this happen. Right," she said, her enthusiasm radiating warmth. "Absolutely," he replied, his voice barely masking the apprehension brewing within him. Yet, as he left the cafeteria, one thought tumbled around in his mind. This journey had only just begun, and the real test was yet to unfold. Each step forward was a step deeper into uncharted territory, filled with uncertainty and challenges he couldn't yet foresee. Would he be able to brave the storm that was surely coming? The tension lay thick in the air, a whisper of the confrontation that awaited him next. Jamal stepped out of the cafeteria, the noise of animated voices fading into a low hum behind him. The bright afternoon sun pierced through the clouds, illuminating the path ahead, but it did little to ease the storm brewing in his chest. Each step felt heavy with the weight of possibility and doubt. He needed to fortify his resolve, to prepare himself not just for Rick's inevitable derision, but for the challenge of maintaining momentum in a precarious landscape. As he walked into the common area, he absorbed his surroundings. Students sprawled on the grass, laughing and enjoying their free time. Everything felt so ordinary, yet Jamal felt like an imposter in this scene of carefree adolescence. His heart raced as he thought about the plans forming with his classmates. Could they really pull it off? What if Rick tried to undermine them? Biting his lip, Jamal decided to seek a private corner, a place where he could gather his thoughts. He sat on a bench, fingers tapping nervously on the wood. His mind raced with strategies, potential projects, and an unwavering need for validation. What if he communicated his vision clearly and decisively? Could he galvanize them even further? Yet lurking in the recesses of his mind was the specter of Rick's critique, a voice that echoed disappointment and skepticism. Jamal gritted his teeth. He might be battling the perception that plagued him, but could he reframe the narrative? Instead of feeling defensive, he needed to use Rick's cynicism as fuel. If he could confront the mockery head-on, what would that mean for him and for the group? His resolve seeped back in as he envisioned his classmates responding to Rick's claims. What if he challenged Rick openly, putting his leadership on display? He envisioned a bold confrontation, where he would use their fundraising initiative not just as a project, but as proof that they could effect change despite opposition. Rick's glaring criticisms weren't merely obstacles. They were opportunities to illustrate resilience. Jamal clenched his fists, determination puncturing his anxiety, but the thought of that confrontation sent a jolt through him. Did he truly have the charisma to sway others? Could he handle the fallout of standing up to Rick? Focus narrowed as he recognized a pivotal moment of decision. Instead of playing it safe, he needed to articulate why they could make a difference. He had the passion. After all, didn't that reflect a silent leadership trait within him? The fire ignited once more. It wasn't enough just to encourage ideas. He had to inspire action. "It's about helping the next person," he whispered to himself, tears stinging his eyes, the weight of responsibility hitting him. For all his introspection, Jamal could feel that he had a choice: to retreat into silence or to become the force for his peers. Returning to the cafeteria felt different. He felt invigorated. He wanted to tell Lily, to rally everyone around this vision of pushback against negativity. Yet as he entered the room, the atmosphere thickened, the air crackling with excitement, but also something else, something disquieting that sent chills running down his spine. Rick stood at a table, flanked by a couple of his friends, laughter ringing out as he brandished a hastily drawn poster. Jamal's heart sank. He sensed an imminent provocation. Fundraising for the cause? More like fundraising for failure. Rick's voice boomed, the words cutting through the buzz of hopeful chatter like a knife. A wave of dread washed over Jamal, yet within it flickered that small ember of defiance. It was time to confront the storm. But would he have the strength to steer the conversation back toward hope? Would he be able to stand his ground and rally his classmates against ridicule? As he took a step forward, uncertain but persistent, he couldn't help but wonder, would this moment shatter their plans, or would it galvanize them into collective action? The answer loomed just ahead, threading through the collective uncertainty. Jamal squared his shoulders as he approached Rick's table, determined to wrest control of the moment. The laughter around him seemed to diminish, giving way to the tension that hung in the air. He could feel the inquisitive stares of his classmates, each gaze reinforcing the urgency of his upcoming confrontation. Was this where he would rise to the occasion, or crumble under the pressure? "Rick," he began, his voice steady but firm, "what's failure if you never even try?" The clarity of his words surprised him. They came out sharper than he expected, tinged with newfound confidence. Expressions around the room shifted as classmates turned their attention fully to him. Curiosity piqued. Rick threw his head back, a mockingly exaggerated laugh exploding from him. "Look who's finally found his voice. But let's be real, this is just a way to save face. You think you can make a difference?" His words cut deep, but they also ignited something within Jamal. "I do think we can make a difference," Jamal countered, his heart thudding with intensity. "Every time you mock us, remember there are people out there who need help. It's not just about us, it's about the community too." He glanced around at his peers, gauging their reactions, fumbling yet for inspiration in their nodding heads. This was not just about Rick. It was about everyone watching him, weighing their opinions. Even in a simple confrontation, he realized he had responsibilities both to himself and to them. Every voice counting rendered his courage imperative. Rick took a step closer, darkness flicking in his eyes. "Community! You're just a kid trying to play hero. Come back when you've actually done something worth noticing." His challenge hung in the air, creating palpable tension that threatened to unravel Jamal's momentum. In that moment, Jamal felt that flicker of doubt course through him. Could he really be something more than just a spectator in this narrative? He drew in a breath, envisioning the possibilities blooming if he pressed further. "Your words don't define us," he stated firmly. "It's what we do next that matters. We're not waiting for approval. We're choosing action." He let his voice rise, feelings of empowerment pulsing through him, pushing the walls back that Rick had tried to erect between them and their vision. As murmurs rippled through the group, Jamal seized the moment. He intensified his focus, directing it outward. "We're not just chasing funds, we're creating a movement. It's about how we uplift each other, not tear each other down." The rush of courage felt electric, galvanizing him even more. A silence enveloped the cafeteria, but within it something shifted. Jamal felt the supportive presence of his classmates. They began to rally, halves of laughter, now a sprinkle of agreement. Lily winked at him from the corner of the room, catching his eye with an uplifting nod of encouragement. Rick shifted uncomfortably, his demeanor faltering for the first time, as Jamal's convictions spurred his peers' whispers of support. "Are you really going to stand back while we take this move?" Jamal pressed, keying in on the energy of the room. "Or are you going to be part of something greater?" The hush met him with a crackle of anticipation, and Jamal knew he could either bolster their collective spirit or watch it dissolve. He took another step forward, aware of the precarious line he walked, the risk of rejection swirling around him like a tempest. Yet under the weight of his desire to lead, he recognized his own voice resonating with an urgency that couldn't be ignored. "Every big journey starts with action," Jamal declared. "Join us in this. Let's show Rick and everyone else what we can accomplish when we stop doubting ourselves." The challenge nestled into the hushed tension, creating a riptide of emotions, a blend of hope, fear, and potential. Would Rick double down, or would he retreat? Jamal could feel the next wave of action cresting just beyond the horizon. With determination brewing in his chest, he felt transformed, poised precariously on the edge of not just a moment, but a movement. How far would he have to push this newfound strength? And more importantly, would it lead him to confront the truth of who he was and how he viewed his own power? Jamal stood before his classmates, the cafeteria electrified by his words, uncertain of what would come next. The tension was thick, palpable, the gathered students brimming with conflicting emotions, yet undeniably drawn to his challenge. He could sense their curiosity, their hesitance, like coiled springs, ready to either snap or embrace his call to action. This was a crossroads for him, not merely in relation to Rick, but more profoundly within the narrative of his own life. Rick still loomed, an unyielding presence, yet as Jamal faced him, something shifted in the very air they breathed. In that moment, Jamal didn't just see an antagonist. He recognized an opportunity, the chance to deepen his conviction and demonstrate how strength could transcend adversities. "You think you can just bully us into silence?" Jamal projected, his voice ringing with authenticity and power. "This isn't just about throwing around insults, it's about real actions, doing something that actually matters." A ripple of agreement surged through the crowd, the eagerness palpable, a response to his clarity and resolve. For the first time, Jamal embraced his role not just as a survivor of adversity, but as an initiator of change. "Why don't you lead instead of lamenting?" another student chimed in, emboldened by Jamal's words. The invitation to share ideas ignited a spark in the room. Voices joined the conversation. Friends he had once perceived as indifferent now rallied around him, fusing passion with the prospect of legacy. Jamal felt the shift. They were not merely united against Rick, but together crafting something consequential. Ideas flowed, fundraising bake sales, community cleanups, transparency forums to discuss their experiences. The collective energy blossomed. It wasn't just about showing Rick they could succeed, it was about standing firm in their narrative to uplift empathize, and create. "Let's get started right away," Jamal exclaimed, realizing he could elevate not just his peers, but also himself. Each person thereafter was a testament to the journey they shared, one of turning disparagement into opportunity. Rick's scoff interrupted, but it was softer now, almost fading into the background. "Good luck making it work," he muttered, but the disdain lacked his previous conviction. It was evident he now stood in the periphery of something larger than himself, a budding movement that challenged his status quo. Jamal didn't dwell on Rick's negativity. Instead, he redirected his focus on the energy budding in the cafeteria. The eagerness to engage sparked throughout the room, their newfound solidarity creating a ripple effect already preparing to extend beyond those walls. Each dialogue woven together stitched empowerment into the fabric of their community. The meeting evolved, transforming into a workshop bursting with hopeful aspirations. As ideas were exchanged and enthusiasm gained momentum, Jamal's heart surged with fulfillment. They weren't just initiatives, they were actions rippling into existence, manifestations of their collective identity and purpose. As the lunch hour waned, Jamal understood clearly. This was the transformation he craved, not just personal redemption, but a collective resolve to redefine who they could be. Guided not by fear of Rick, but by an unwavering commitment to support one another, Jamal felt robust confidence emanating from within. Weeks progressed, the club blossoming beyond expectations. Students connected, empathy through dialogue, solidifying trust and understanding. Jamal was not merely a player in their narrative. He became an influential voice, asserting their collective objectives with solid determination. They were not just a club, it was a community, realizing change was possible in shared spaces. Reflection tugged at Jamal. His metamorphosis was substantial. The expelled narrative felt distant, hanging in the air like a memory gradually losing its weight. His grandmother's teachings resonated deeper than ever, the essence of turning pain into purpose. He no longer feared judgment. He possessed the strength to redefine his identity, of being seen beyond his image as an angry black boy, and instead recognized as a leader among his peers. Moreover, the recognition from teachers filtered in. Jamal was invited to present his initiatives before the school board. There, he stood confidently, articulating their journey, drawing connections between empathy and communal resilience. He founded himself, a solid standing amidst applause, validation swirling around him, further solidifying his place within the school fabric. With every milestone, Jamal embodied growth. The weight of his earlier shame transformed into a badge of achievement. He had conquered the narrative. No longer an outsider, he became an agent of influence, carving his path while expanding awareness alongside his peers. The very school he had once felt detached from now resonated with the heartbeat of connection. As Jamal exited the board meeting, pleasure rose in him, underpinning the sense of genuine accomplishment. He had succeeded in changing not only perceptions, but the trajectory of his life and others. He had risen to rewrite the narrative. He was now Jamal, a competent leader, a voice of change, and a symbol of hope for those who needed one. This extraordinary journey culminated in individual resolution, and as Jamal looked out at the limitless horizon ahead, he felt not just acceptance, but an empowered purpose guiding him forward. Now, if you resonate with Jamal's journey and the triumph of personal narratives, you need to subscribe now to continue following exclusive emotional stories that transform lives. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm, propelling more incredible journeys into the light. Comment below your thoughts, reactions, or theories about this conclusion, because every word matters in sharing this transformation. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who crave inspiration and empowerment. Let's spread this message far and wide. Every act of kindness and support carries the potential to transform another life.